Currently, Earth.
It was January 31st in the year 1865 that the U.S. House of Representatives passes the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, abolishing slavery in America. The amendment read, quote, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction," unquote. When the Civil War initiated, President Abraham Lincoln's professed goal was the restoration of the Union. But early in the war, the Union began keeping escaped enslaved people rather than returning them to their owners. So slavery essentially ended wherever the Union Army was victorious. In September of 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all enslaved people in areas that were still in rebellion against the Union. This measure opened the issue of what to do about slavery in border states that had not seceded or in areas that had been captured by the Union before the proclamation. In 1864, an amendment abolishing slavery passed the U.S. Senate but died in the House of Democrats, rallied in the name of states' rights. The election of 1864 brought Lincoln back to the White House along with significant Republican majorities in both houses, so it appeared the amendment was headed for passage when the new Congress convened in early 1865. Lincoln preferred that the amendment receive bipartisan support. Some Democrats indicated support for the measure, but many still resisted. The amendment passed 119 to 56, just barely above the necessary two-thirds majority. Several Democrats abstained, but the 13th Amendment was sent to the states for ratification, which came in December of 1865. With the passage of the amendment, the institution that had indelibly shaped American history was eradicated. June 6 in the year 1944 is actually considered one of the most pivotal moments in modern history. Better known by its code name D-Day, the Allied assault on 5 beaches in Nazi-occupied France was a result of over a year of planning and jockeying amongst various military and political leaders. On January 31st in 1944, several key leaders agreed to postpone the invasion over concerns that there would not be enough ships available by May, finally setting the stage for the June invasion. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin began urging British Prime Minister Winston Churchill to open a second front almost as soon as the Nazis invaded Russia in 1941. After the American entry into the war at the end of that year, the three nations agreed that such action was necessary, but disagreed on how it should proceed. British leadership, for whom the slaughters and stalemates of World War I's Western Front were still relatively recent memories, eventually prevailed upon the other allies to first attack Italy, which Churchill called Europe's soft underbelly. With plans to attack German-held North Africa and the Italian island of Sicily underway, the three leaders agreed in May of 1943 to assault the European mainland. In December of 1943, American General Dwight D. Eisenhower and British General Bernard Montgomery were presented with a detailed plan for the invasion, codenamed Operation Overlord. Both generals argued for increasing the scope of Overlord from 3 divisions to 5 divisions, supported by 3 airborne divisions. Eisenhower was eager to enact such a plan in May, but had concerns over the availability of landing craft. The Italian campaign, which provided the Allies with valuable experience in amphibious landings, was also taking up many of the boats that would be necessary for the Normandy invasion. By the 31st, all relevant commanders had come around to this way of thinking and signed off on an early June invasion. D-Day would be postponed once more by a single day. High winds on June 4th forced Eisenhower to push the Great Crusade back one more day. Finally, on the morning of June 6th, the long-awaited invasion of France began. By the time the sun set, the Allies had established a foothold, the first step in a march that would lead them all the way to Berlin in the defeat of Nazi Germany. On January 31st in the year 1971, the Apollo 14 departs for the moon. Apollo 14, piloted by astronauts Alan B. Shepard Jr., Edgar D. Mitchell, and Stuart A. Roosa, is successfully launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida, on a manned mission to the moon. On February 5th, after suffering some initial problems in docking the lunar and command modules, Shepard and Mitchell descended to the lunar surface on the third U.S. moon landing. Upon stepping out of the lunar module, Shepard, who in 1961 aboard Freedom 7 was the first American in space, became the fifth astronaut to walk on the moon. Shepard and Mitchell remained on the lunar surface for nearly 34 hours, conducting simple scientific experiments such as hitting golf balls into space with Shepard's golf club and collecting 96 pounds of lunar samples. On February 9th, Apollo 14 safely returned to Earth. The information documented on this audio file can be verified on history.com.